Greetings, people of the internet. This is number 10 for me, so I've been doing this for a minute now. You know, a lot of people have been doing it into the thousands, but I'm here on Polyticks episode number 10, and you know, what I try to do is I try to do sort of a long form show, and then chop it up into bits. I'm not doing a live stream yet because I'm a one-man band right now. I don't have the help, frankly, to do a live stream yet. I'll figure it out eventually, and I'll probably start doing some live streaming, but I like having the control of editing right now, and I'm getting good at kind of piecing this stuff together. I've got kind of a little bit of a, routine, I guess, kind of a process set up for this. So there's been so much stuff. Basically, during the week, I will write things down in my notebook. I'll just kind of write down, you know, what to talk about this week. And eventually I get to the point where I'm like, I'm going to have to shelve this because I got so much stuff to talk about. So let's dive into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about this week is this honey trap story from Intercept. Now I get a weekly email from the Intercept. I signed up for their mailing list a long time ago. So I log into my email the other day and I see this article, and here's what it says. The honey trap, the FBI used an undercover cop with punk hair to spy on activists and manufacture crimes. Now, one of the reasons I want to bring this up is with the Twitter files and all the stuff going on with Matt Taibbi and all these different things coming out about censorship and the FBI working with tech to censor and stifle dissent and all that kind of stuff. I think this is relevant to that because people think that all the dissent is on the right, and the only thing that's being done is the only things like this are being done to the right, and that's just not the case. Here's evidence right here that it's being done to the left as well. And I think it's relevant in the context of a January 6th type event because people want to act like January 6th wasn't a similar kind of setup to this, right? And let's go through some of the details because you're probably thinking, oh, you conspiracy theorist or Putin lover or whatever, you know, people got you thinking. But let's. So the first thing it says here is April Rogers left, a police officer who went undercover for the FBI in the Colorado Springs activist community, participating in a housing rights march during which several activists were arrested. So this is just the caption on the photo here with April. So let's read a little bit of the article The Intercept has here for us. So it says the work of Rogers, April Rogers, or Chelsea, is a direct offshoot of the FBI's summer of 2020 investigation in Denver, where Mickey Windecker, a paid FBI informant, drove a silver hearse, rose to a leadership role in the radical justice movement, and encouraged activists to become violent. Windecker provided information to the FBI about an activist who attended demonstrations in both Denver and Colorado Springs, prompting federal agents to launch a new investigation in the smaller Colorado city. I tell the story of Windecker and his FBI work, as well as the investigation in Colorado Springs in Alphabet Boys, a 10-episode documentary podcast. So the author of this has a podcast that goes into much more detail. If you're interested, I'll put a link to the story in the description. As the FBI's Colorado Springs investigation reveals, Denver wasn't the only city where federal agents infiltrated racial justice groups. That summer, working through Joint Terrorism Task Force partnership with local police, the FBI assembled files on local activists using information secretly gathered by Rogers. Once Rogers gained trust among the activists, she tried to set up at least 2 young men in gun-running conspiracies, Her tactics mirrored those of Windecker, who tried to entrap 2 Denver racial justice activists in crimes, including an FBI-engineered plot to assassinate Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser that went nowhere. So unlike the story in Michigan, where those guys were misled by the FBI with the Gretchen Whitmer thing, this one went nowhere, but it's the same thing. It's the same pattern. This time they're just doing it to left-wing people. So basically, what this Intercept article is kind of covering is how they started in Denver, and then through the Denver infiltration, they were able to discover that there was some more stuff going on in Colorado Springs. So they sent this April Rogers, aka Chelsea, and the article talks about how she positioned herself as a sex worker and was very open about being a sex worker, and just was really suspect in a lot of different ways, and a lot of them kind of had a clue she might have been an infiltrator. But again, I just wanted to show you this because it relates heavily to the January 6th thing, where there are plenty of, infiltrating officers present. And you can see this. And it's one of the reasons I think that they're so upset that Tucker Carlson is releasing some of this footage now. But let's revisit a clip I showed in one of my earlier broadcasts, I guess, videos. Check this out. This is a clip where it's at the January 6th protest, and you see this guy cracking on the window, and he has a helmet on with a big Trump sticker on the back of it. Now, who does that? That's such a cop move. He's like, look, I'm with Trump. Cracking on the window. It's just patently obvious what's going on here. So then, totally outside the narrative, of course, one of these MAGA guys jumps up and grabs him. And you can hear the lady in the thing yelling Antifa, whatever. So another piece of tape relevant to this is this Ray Epps guy. And so this guy is out here rallying people. Obviously a cop. Watch. Peacefully. So, again, just to tie the lace the boot here so you can lick it. This stuff is very common. And the pearl clutching and the dramatics around January 6th make it evident that this happened there as well. And I'm not saying anything. The people that committed crimes, there were people that committed crimes, obviously. There were people that broke into the offices and took things, and those people got arrested. And if you committed a crime, you get what you deserve. But a lot of people were at the Capitol protest just to protest peacefully, not to break laws. And it's very clear that just what happened here in Colorado Springs was happening at this January 6th protest. And just to kind of tie this off nicely too, recently there was a big, there was a lot of bustle and buzz in the press about a Proud Boy testifying to Congress. Turns out the guy was an informant for the FBI. And this Enrique Tarrio guy who runs the quote-unquote Proud Boys is an FBI informant. So the Fedsurrection and, I think it was, and I've shown this clip before where I've shown this clip of Matt Gaetz before. I'm not going to show it again. But he talks about how, post 9/11, there's all this money for terror. There's no more Islamic terror threat. What do? They turn this budget they turned that scope internally, and they start targeting, domestic terrorists. Now everyone's a domestic terrorist, and the FBI is literally manufacturing these plots. So it's out of control. So the other day in my feed, I'm scrolling through and I see video of these robot dogs in a zoo. And it's a very dystopian thing to witness. So watch some of this. And the video comes from Mashable. But basically they sent one of these robot dogs into the zoo, and they just have all this video of it interacting with animals and animals kind of reacting to it. It would have been way more interesting if they got footage of one of these lions attacking it and trying to rip it up, or one of these cheetahs just grabbing it and running off with it. I think that would have been a lot more interesting to see. But it's definitely interesting to watch animals react to these things, because it's not much different to how humans would react to them if they'd never heard about them. If one of these things walked up to you, you'd be like, what is that? It almost looks like an insect. It's so creepy. And it doesn't have a head. That's the other thing that's really creepy about it. It's just like a zombie four-legged body, and when you see what's going on with these protests in France, like, you can imagine an army of these things, being controlled by God knows who, chasing protesters through the streets of some major city, and lasering them or shooting machine gun rounds or trank darts, who knows. It definitely looks like something out of RoboCop, and it's a really kind of creepy thing to witness. Very dystopian, to use the term again. And I don't know, why are these being developed in the first place? Because I've seen these things quite a bit in recent years. The last couple of years, it's Boston Dynamics, I think, is the name of the company that's pumping these out. I keep seeing these videos of these robot dogs popping up. Like, what are they developing this for? I should probably read the articles. I'm sure it has something to do with military. I mean, what else are they going to use something like that for? So maybe I should do some more research on this and follow up. But it just was one of those things that caught me, and it was very disturbing. A lot of what I end up talking about in these videos is just odd stuff I see in my feed on social media, or stuff that comes through as an email, So recently I got this video in my feed from Guns N' Roses, and it's a "We Stand With Ukraine" video. Slash has you can see Slash has like a blue and gold Ukraine guitar, and they got the little Ukraine flag emoji in the post, and it's just so disappointing to see these bands cape for war like this without, oh, Putin's so bad, he's a Hitler, morons. And with Guns N' Roses especially, they wrote a really great song called Civil War that the lyrics are just so relevant to what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm not going to dive all the way into that, but my challenge to you is, if you care about Ukraine, who was the president before Zelensky? Answer that question. If you can't answer that question, sit the fuck down, because you don't know what's going on. You have no grasp of history. All you know is Putin invaded, and people on the news keep saying unprovoked. Yeah, it was provoked. There's a whole civil war history. The leaders before Zelensky, Zelensky's a US plant, but the leaders before him, the one leader before him was a U.S. plant. And I'm going to show you a clip later. Anyway, I don't want to get into the whole Ukraine war thing. The point is, if you're in a rock band and you're uncritically supporting war, you're a fucking poser. You're a piece of shit. And these guys are old boomer fuckers. So whatever, you know? I mean, most people lost respect for Axl a long time ago. I actually thought Chinese Democracy was a pretty good album. I kind of like still respected him. But this kind of shit is where I already went off about Ministry doing it. So let's go through the lyrics. There's this song. Guns N' Roses has this great song called Civil War. And these are the lyrics. It says, look at your young men fighting. Look at your women crying. Look at your young men dying the way they've always done before. Look at the hate we're breeding. Look at the fear we're feeding. Look at the lives we're leading the way we've always done before. My hands are tied. This is where it gets good and relevant to what's going on in the war they're supporting. The billions shift from side to side, and the wars go on with brainwashed pride for the love of God and our human rights, and all these things are swept aside by bloody hands time can't deny. And we are washed away by your genocide, and history hides the lies of our civil wars. The same people pushing the... I'm going to get to this later. In this other piece I'm going to do about Iraq, and it's the 20th anniversary, but the same people selling you this Ukraine thing are the same people that sold you the Iraq war. And anyway, this is very frustrating, as you can tell. Did you wear a black armband when they shot the man who said peace could last forever? And in my first memories, they shot Kennedy. I went numb when I learned to see. So I never fell for Vietnam. We got the wall of DC to remind us all that you can't trust freedom when it's not in your hands, when everybody's fighting for the promised land. And I don't need your civil war. It feeds the rich while it buries the poor. Your power-hungry selling soldiers in a human grocery store ain't that fresh. I don't need your civil war. If you care about Ukraine, you advocate for peace. And I don't know if you saw the news this week. The Chinese advocate for peace and put out a peace plan. And then our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said, don't be fooled by this. Yeah, and Medea Benjamin from Code Pink, old school war protester, called out in a speech, in a meeting he was giving, hey, what's your plan? If you don't like the Chinese plan, what's your plan? And that's a great point. And these dipshits, frankly, like Axl and Guns N' Roses, fucking morons, caping for war, U2, Ministry, all these dumb fuck bands. Forgive my French. No, don't pardon my French. They're fucking retards. It's like the Bill Hicks bit when with Rockers Against Drugs. Have you ever heard that bit? It's hilarious. I don't know if I can play it without getting the copyright mark, but he has this bit where he's talking about, he's like, hey, we're Rockers Against Drugs. We support Bush's, anti-drug program. And he's like, and he's like, he has this impression of all these rock stars sucking the devil's junk, which is what they're doing. The same thing here. If you're out here caping for war that you know nothing about, you're terrible. And this is just... It's so frustrating to me to see this, especially when these are people who I respected as a musician. I do music. That's my thing. And like I've said before, I feel like these stories where music and politics intersect are my forte. And as soon as I saw this video with Guns N' Roses caping for war, I thought of this song. And it's just so appropriate. Because power-hungry selling soldiers in a human grocery store, we're using these people as a proxy. They're fighting the war for us, and people in the U.S. can wear T-shirts and post yay Ukraine on their Facebook, but you're not the one that has to fight. You're not the one whose relatives have to die. So there was a clip from Bill Maher I wanted to play in relation to this too, because they're already telling you, just like Afghanistan, just like Iraq. Listen to this. Listen to this clip. I saw this morning, and this woman works for the Atlantic.
That we had reasons that Putin doesn't have in going into Ukraine, but that's not how they see it. So their view is, and yes, China and Russia never had any love for each other. Even during the Cold War, when they were both communists and they should have been allied closer, it was very frosty.
We forced them together.
We have to just be, number one is to be anti-America. America is the one who's trying to bully the world. We've seen it over and over again, and we have to line up against them. That, I think, is the scary part, is because...
Yeah, and we're giving them that case, Bill.
On that premise.
Yeah, and I think that there's
it's a valid premise.
Folly that wars
Listen
were
to
won
this.
Quickly, which we learned twice that wasn't true recently. And I think that the Russian engagement in Ukraine is going to last for many, 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 many years to come, weakening that
many
considerably. And it's terrifying. I don't know.
Okay, a school principal at a Florida...
I mean, there it is. That woman writes for the Atlantic, and she's beautiful, but I'm sorry, lady. You know, she said the quiet part out loud. It's going to last for many, many, many years. It's our new Afghanistan. It's the new money laundering op for the criminals. It's ridiculous. And Axl Rose supports it, and all the rebels and the peaceniks and the people who used to have critical thinking skills and used to be skeptics of power are now licking ass to power. Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses out here sucking dick to power. That's what money does to you, I guess. It's like the same thing happened to Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow. Like once you get to a point where you're comfortable, you're not critical anymore. Why would you be? Everything's good for you, Not that things are bad for me, but it's kind of sad to see this, It's kind of saddening. What the fuck am I? I'm Guns N' Roses. Like anyone cares about them anyway. Fucking my YouTube feed is usually full of two things: politics news and clips like this. So if you've been paying attention to what's going on in France, huge protests broke out when they tried to raise the retirement age. Let's look at that. So the reports say at some point, I've read 9 million. That is crazy. You think we'd ever see anything like that in the U.S.? We did see some protests, but that's just insane. And that's, people give the French crap. I don't know if you remember back in the Iraq War, they called the French all kinds of names. Surrender monkeys. They changed the name of French fries to freedom fries in the cafeteria. That's how committed these goons were to the Iraq War. But the French obviously have a lot more balls than America does, because all they had to do was mention raising the... I think Macron actually did it. He pushed it through Parliament or something, and this is what happened. And I made a joke. America would like to do this, but... we don't want to miss True Lies premiering on CBS. I don't know if you've seen this, but they made a TV series of the movie True Lies, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is a secret CIA agent. because that's what America needs right now, right? Like, I mean, for sure. So anyway, one of the things I thought was real interesting about this is recently, as these protests have been going, you're starting to see firefighters joining up. And also cops taking off their gear and joining the protests. Now, a couple people said, hey, be wary of this, right? Like, these are cops, don't trust them. But they're going to put the helmets back on and start shooting later. But I mean, even if they're doing it for show, the fact that they're doing it at all, I think is pretty telling. So then this other guy kind of shows, this is footage of the Paris, I think this morning, today's Saturday. So anyway, I don't know why that isn't getting wall-to-wall coverage here in the United States. I mean, yes, I do, but because, do you know why? Do you know what I'm going to say? You think you know what I'm going to say, but you don't. You know why I think this isn't getting wall-to-wall coverage in the United States? Because more important things are being covered. Do you know what those more important things are? Trump's indictment. Yes, ladies and gentlemen,
Donald Trump's done. He's done. There's no question about that. He's done.
Breaking news.
A bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump. Today was a turning point.
A turning point.
We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
The beginning of the end.
And breaking news.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
The call for impeachment.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
wow. So, I don't want to play that whole thing, but I don't know if you saw it this week, but Trump was back in the news. And I found this little clip via Al Jazeera that kind of sums it up. So this is basically what they're trying to get him on this week. It says, Al Jazeera says, the story became public in 2018. In subsequent interviews, Daniels said she had a sexual encounter with Trump at a celebrity golf tournament in 2006. Several U.S. media outlets reported Trump will likely be charged with falsifying business records for trying to improperly conceal payment as legal expenses. Take note of that. That is what the trouble is about. The charge, normally a misdemeanor, could be upgraded to a felony if prosecutors link the payment to violations of election law, which cap donations to political candidates at $2,700 per individual and require them to be made public. The payment to Daniels right before the 2016 vote could be considered an illegal campaign contribution. So these are the legal gymnastics they're doing just to try and arrest Trump. This is really weird. It is really weird, and it's also not really weird. So Jonathan Turley is a guy I respect a lot who's very well versed in law because he's a lawyer. And interestingly enough, I know Jonathan Turley because of Rachel Maddow, because I used to watch Rachel Maddow, and he used to be on Rachel Maddow before she totally jumped off the partisan cult cliff. But Jonathan Turley tweeted out, Andrew Cuomo has joined criticism of both the New York and Georgia investigations of Donald Trump. The question is whether Trump would be helped or hurt if these state prosecutions are scuttled. So what Turley says is this is a Frankenstein indictment. And he says, the scene from the 1931 Frankenstein came to mind this week as Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg prepared an indictment for former President Donald Trump. It's the ultimate gravedigger charge where Bragg unearthed a case from 2016 and through a series of novel steps is seeking to bring it back to life. Now, this is what the liberal journalists, quote unquote, or the liberal talking heads spent this week blowing hot air about. Keith Olbermann literally did like 4 episodes on this alone. He called Trump a terrorist. He spent the entire week talking about this. He didn't talk about the French protests. He didn't talk about anything. Of course, he didn't talk about anything related to Biden's China money or any of the Biden laptop. He spent every day on a payment to Stormy Daniels. And what they're trying to do basically is make it seem like it was a campaign contribution when it was hush money. And so it's a steep hill to climb. And anyway, if you're paying attention to the details on any of this stuff, wow, these people are sad. Holy crap. So what is also hilarious and what is also interesting is last year, the Hillary Clinton campaign faced a similar accusation and actually paid a fine for it. DNC Clinton Campaign agreed to steal dossier funding fine. And that is actually the smoking gun that proves the Russia stuff was a complete hoax, because they paid for the Steele dossier that the entire Trump-Russia thing was based on, and they had to pay a fine for funding it. So that kind of basically is the smoking gun that's like, hey, the Clinton campaign funded the entire Trump-Russia thing. So anyway, let's read this for a minute. And this is from the AP. Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee have agreed to pay $113,000 to settle a federal election commission investigation into whether they violated campaign finance law by misreporting spending on research that eventually became the infamous Steele dossier. That's according to documents sent Tuesday to the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, which had filed an administrative complaint in 2018 accusing the Democrats of misreporting payments made to a law firm during the 2016 campaign to obscure the spending, which Jeff Girth covered, how they funneled this money through a bunch of different people to create distance. The Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie, which then hired Fusion GPS, a research and intelligence firm, to conduct opposition research on Republican candidate Donald Trump's ties to Russia. But on FEC forms, the Clinton campaign classified the spending as legal services. By intentionally obscuring their payments through Perkins Coie and failing to publicly disclose the true purpose of those payments, the campaign and the DNC were able to avoid publicly reporting on their statutorily required FEC disclosure forms the fact they were paying Fusion GPS to perform opposition research on Trump with the intent of influencing the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. The initial complaint had read, the Clinton campaign and the DNC had argued that the payments had been described accurately, but agreed, according to the documents, to settle without conceding to avoid further legal costs. But the dossier has been largely discredited since its publication, with core aspects of the material exposed as unsupported and unproven rumors. A special counsel assigned to investigate the origins of the Trump-Russia probe charged one of the Steele's sources with lying to the FBI, that was Michael Sussman, and charged a cybersecurity lawyer who worked for Clinton's campaign with lying to the FBI during a 2016 meeting in which he relayed concerns about the Russia-based Alpha Bank. So there it is. That is the smoking gun that the Russia stuff was fake. And this is the exact same thing they spent the last week freaking out about, trying to prosecute Trump over Stormy Daniels for. It's our politics in this country are a circus. So, Keith Olbermann, what do you have to say about this? You didn't report on the Clinton stuff. Why not?
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
I agree. Absolutely. Very insightful commentary, Keith. Thank you. So I did a piece this week on Kanye West, and it was a really good piece, I thought, but it was kind of long. And then this morning I woke up and I was logged into Instagram and I saw Kanye's back on Instagram. And what did he post? He posted a shot of 21 Jump Street with the caption, "Watching Jonah Hill in 21 Jump Street made me like Jewish people again. No one should take anger against one or two individuals and transform that into hatred towards millions of innocent people. No Christian can be labeled an anti-Semite knowing Jesus is Jew." So anyway, the piece I did this week, I opened with this Diggin' Daily piece, or it's basically a post from Diggin' Daily, and this is what it says. "Kanye completely owns 100% of his companies now. Even if he loses half his sales, all his profits go to him. No more middleman. He did all that without having to go to court and get out of existing contracts. That's a crazy business move." So in this piece, I kind of recapped on a timeline all the crazy things Kanye did, and it started with him freaking out and posting all his record contracts. I don't know if you remember that, but there was a big deal about it, and it was kind of amazing. He posted literally all his record contracts, so you could see. I remember him talking about how the record companies make you a slave and all this stuff, and so then he posted a picture of himself, or a video of himself peeing on the Grammy, which I thought was amazing. And so then I found this clip, and watch this clip. Basically, this is a clip that came out around September 13th of 2022.
Rapper and clothing designer Kanye West is saying he's done with corporate America. Hey, Ashley, what is his problem?
Yeah. Well, he says it's time for him to branch out by himself. The rapper and designer saying this, quote, yeah, it's time for me to go it alone. It's fine. I made the company's money. The company's made me money. We created ideas that will change apparel forever. Now it's time for ye to make the new industry. No more companies standing in between me and the audience. But it may not be so easy to make a clean break. Pardon me.
Jolly good, jolly good.
Agreements with Adidas and Gap to produce sneakers and apparel. He's also been at odds with his bank, JP Morgan Chase, criticizing his executives, including CEO Jamie Dimon. Bottom line, West says his creative juices are not being allowed to flow freely, and he's going alone.
So after that clip, I kind of went through this timeline of Kanye doing stupid stuff, and these are a couple of choice cuts from the Alex Jones interview that I pulled, just to show what a troll Kanye is and how the black mask thing is interesting. He's wearing, he's like wearing like a gimp mask, like a zipper mask or a ski mask the whole time. But listen to this.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
I've got the perfect answer for the ADL. They are going to have to listen up. What we did is we brought Netanyahu with us.
I'm in the Twilight Zone right now.
Netanyahu, what do you have to say? What do you have to say to Alex Jones right now, Nick Fuentes and Ye? It was bad. It was bad for Trump to meet with Nick and Ye. Okay. I had no idea your voice is going to sound like that, Netanyahu.
So you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu?
I just heard about this guy 2 weeks ago since like the tweet, and I thought he had a funny name. I heard he's like really into he's like a super killer, and I could die for saying this. So in case this the last time you ever hear from me.
Well, look. I'm glad you guys are here.
I'm glad you guys are here. You gotta love Alex Jones. So this next clip is my absolute favorite clip in the history of the internet. Okay, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's really funny.
For the ADL to have what are very racial policies.
The ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL. ADL, shut up.
Well, they run all the censorship and everything.
They don't run anything. They're played out. We run the streets.
I
well, I'm singling out the ADL. So
That's we don't know who they are. No one in high school knew what the word anti-Semitic was until Ye made it popular.
no, I hear you. It's definitely a tiger by the tail. Nick, you want to comment here?
It's definitely a tiger by the tail. Oh my God, that's just hilarious.
No black person should say nothing bad about me in public unless they're a puppet. Period. I put my life on the line. And then afterwards, they're going to talk about it. If anything happens to me, everyone's going to be like, oh, he was the greatest. He was the greatest. Everybody shut up. Everybody shut up. Go home to your scared little Benz and your scared little townhome and your scared little movie contracts and shut up. Don't talk to me about nothing, bro.
Well, what do you think of Ice Cube? That he lost 9 or 7 million, whatever it was, because he wouldn't take the shot. I respect that.
Yeah, I respect Cube, but he's got to play his position. It's like, it's fine. I wanted Cube to come in and help us with the politics because he's one of the only people that was brave enough to talk.
He's definitely for real.
Yeah, he's an engineer. He's an architect and engineer by trade. And then he dropped out to do entertainment. Guys, hey, everybody, stop. All engineers.
Sleep. So you were a little mad at Farrakhan. You had to talk. How'd that go?
It's gonna be all Christian, Ari. Rom. Don't worry. It's gonna be.
This
all
is where
Christian.
Alex Jones kind of
You are something else. Look, you look really friendly and nice, but with that mask, you look evil.
calls
So,
Kanye out.
let me just say this in closing. I've done a lot of study. I think Hitler was a really bad guy, and I repudiate what Hitler did. I understand that the British intelligence set him up and used him.
I like Hitler.
I don't like Hitler. And I know you're trying to be shocking with that.
I'm not trying to be shocking. I like.
Very funny stuff. Very funny stuff. I don't know if Kanye is doing performance art. I like to. If I was Alex Jones, I would have hammered on the black mask. I would have been like, "What's the?" I know that he did push on him a little bit. He kind of tried to. He's like, "Why don't I get full Kanye?" You know. But I would have kept asking him questions. Like, there's some kind of symbolism there. Anyway. After all this happened, right? I mean, I think the Alex Jones interview happened before all this, but all these companies cut ties with Kanye. You know, he basically, everyone dropped him. Adidas dropped him. Gap dropped him. So watch this.
This is the donuts, activated charcoal, black sesame, white sauce and honey, and then coffee distillate. Have you ever tried?
Well, I would try that.
I'm curious what you think it tastes like. Everyone has a different reaction.
Pretty open-minded about what I put in my mouth.
So I'm gonna skip up here a little bit. He basically.
I'm supposed to be getting a deck this week, and we're gonna see with this one company that basically figured out how to do it a lot faster.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yeah.
Are they assembled? Is the sole attached, or are they printed?
It's all one solid.
So I guess I wanted you to see this part where he shows Kanye. Watch this.
Yeah, these are 3D printed.
Kanye shows these 3D printed boots he made.
Create a 3D printing facility, like a farm.
And his assistant, or this guy that works for him, is talking about making a 3D printing farm.
See with this one company that
So Kanye's showing right here, he has all the resources to make his own shoes. He doesn't need Adidas anymore.
It's all one solid piece that's printed.
That's incredible.
And he's out of his record contract as well, so he doesn't need them
hours.
anymore either. He can just...
For one shoe. So obviously,
Oh, and I
it's not
can
feasible.
see.
Yeah, it's every single layer. So right now, it's not that feasible for production, but we're trying to basically speed up the tech that's available to make this more practical.
So he's saying...
No labor costs at that point.
I mean, there will be labor. There's machines. You know, you gotta get the resources.
So this guy's telling him basically how he's working on optimizing this process. They can 3D print these shoes, and this guy's like, yeah, I'm trying to get a 3D printer farm together so we can speed this process up. But as the technology continues to evolve, I mean, it's only going to get easier. So that's kind of amazing. And my whole point behind my piece was Kanye's a lot smarter than people think he is. So this year is the 20th anniversary of the Iraq War. And Wow. 20 years. The Iraq War was really my introduction to politics. Politics was always in the peripheral for me. I grew up listening to Rage Against the Machine, and I didn't ever really think that much about what the lyrics meant, until when I saw the video for Freedom where they talk about Leonard Peltier. I did kind of get that as a kid, but for the most part, that kind of stuff was lost on me until the Iraq War. That's what lit me up. That's when my brain activated to politics. So the 20th anniversary of that just, brought back a bunch of memories, and it made me want to dig into the archives and stuff. So one of the first things the first thing I just thought this was really poetic and relevant, was a tweet that Caitlin Johnstone put out, and she said, "The Iraq invasion feels kind of like if your dad had stood up at the dinner table, cut off your sister's head in front of everyone, gone right back to eating, and never suffered any of the consequences, and everyone just kind of forgot about it and carried on like it never happened." I thought that was such a great analogy, because it was like such a shocking thing, and after, there were protests, and everyone was outraged, and people like Al Jorgensen and Guns N' Roses protested, and then it happened, and everyone just kind of like Obama came in, and everyone kind of continued quietly. In doing some research, I think the first place I came to was Al Jazeera, and I pulled a clip about corruption in the government there, because it's so similar. Just listen to this, and everything they describe here matches the political system here.
It really mattered before.
Now, the other problem with this new political system is that it's allowed corruption to flourish. It's a huge issue, and that's our third takeaway.
They call it power sharing, but to a huge extent, as one Iraqi politician herself called it, it's us basically splitting up the cake.
Most Iraqis basically see this political system as a elite pact of these parties that came to share the spoils of the state, to gut the system of its wealth.
The greatest threat to Iraq's advancement is internal corruption. The siphoning of state resources away from the benefit of the people into personal and private accounts for personal and private aims.
Keep in mind, there's actually a lot of money sloshing around in Iraq. It's got huge oil reserves, which bring in billions of dollars every year and basically fund the government. But it's mostly the politicians who benefit.
Their fortunes have increased by billions while the country continues to decline on, the quality of life, on income, on levels of employment.
So the ministry.
So as you can see, the parallels there between what's going on here in the United States are uncanny. It's very, very similar. So the rest of the clips I pulled are from a show that Bill Moyers did called Selling the War. And wow, there's just so much in here. But what I tried to do was distill the real media stuff about the build-up to the war. So this first part talks about Bush,
the president,
and how they work these press conferences, because they do it the same now with Biden. They do the exact same type of stuff.
Before he will order America to war, President Bush calls a press conference to make the case for disarming Saddam Hussein.
Iraq is a part of the war on terror. It's a country that trains terrorists, a country that could arm terrorists. Saddam Hussein and his weapons are a direct threat to this country.
For months now, his administration has been determined to link Iraq to 9/11.
September the 11th should say to the American people that we're now a battlefield.
At least a dozen times during this press conference, he will invoke 9/11 and Al-Qaeda to justify a preemptive attack on a country that has not attacked America.
Mr. President, if you decide...
But the White House press corps will ask no hard questions tonight about those claims. Listen to what the president says.
This is a scripted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
How scripted? Sure enough, The president's staff has given him a list of reporters to call on.
Let's see here. Elizabeth. Gregory. April. Did you have a question, or did I call upon you cold?
I have a question.
Okay.
Now what they do is they have, the cast of what's that Netflix show? I don't even remember the name of it. It's got Jason Sudeikis though. But anyway, it's a clown show. So here's how basically this is really interesting because they talk about how they have these kind of defectors that they get these stories from that they help to build the case for war.
Big effort, in fact, to find people who seem to have credible evidence about what was going on inside Iraq. Because, in fact, if you could find somebody who was credible talking about a nuclear program in Iraq or chemical weapons, that would be a big story.
And it worked. The New Yorker, USA Today, The Washington Post, The New York Daily News, The New York Times. And on PBS, just 2 months after 9/11, Frontline and the New York Times teamed up for a documentary on the defectors.
Captain Saba Qadada is a former Army officer who defected from Iraq. He made a crude drawing of what he says is a terrorist training camp on the outskirts of Baghdad.
There were caveats.
And a further caution. These defectors have been brought to Frontline's attention by one group of Iraqi dissidents, the INC, the Iraqi National Congress.
But the caveats couldn't compete with the spectacular tales told by defectors. Before the invasion, the New York Times' Judith Miller would write 6 prominent stories based on their testimony.
Ahmed Shalabi is a controversial leader of the Iraqi opposition.
And still on the web, a report about the defectors, narrated by Judith Miller and produced by New York Times Television for the NewsHour on PBS.
Well, Judy Miller had been an old friend of Chalabi, did a lot of the stories on Chalabi, was very favorable to Chalabi.
James Bamford found out that in 2001, Chalabi had arranged for Miller to meet in Thailand with a defector from Iraq named Al-Haderi.
So Al-Haderi was in Bangkok. Judy Miller flew there to interview him. The New York Times ran a front-page story basically confirming everything the administration had been saying about Iraq.
Al-Haderi said he was a Kurd from northern Iraq. He told Miller the Iraqis had hidden chemical and biological weapons, some Miller reported, right under Saddam's presidential sights. The story spread far and wide.
The New York Times remains immensely influential. People in the TV world read it every morning, and it's amazing how often you'll see a story go from the front page of the day's paper in the morning to the evening newscast at night. People in government, of course, read it, think tanks, and so on.
There were some red flags that the New York Times story threw out immediately, which caught our eyes immediately.
These guys are actual reporters.
The idea
this is like 10 years old.
The enemies of Saddam had been allowed into his most top secret military facilities? I don't think so. That was, for me, the biggest red flag. And there were others, like the idea that Saddam Hussein would put a biological weapons facility under his residence. I mean, would you put a biological weapons lab under your living room? I don't think so.
The first rule of being an intelligence agent or a journalist, and they're really not that different, is you're skeptical of defectors because they have a reason to exaggerate. They want to increase their value to you. They probably want something from you. It doesn't mean they're lying, but you should be not. Journalists are supposed to be skeptical, right? And I'm afraid the New York Times reporter in that case and a lot of other reporters were just not skeptical of what these defectors were saying. Nor was the administration.
A former top Iraqi nuclear scientist tells Congress Iraq could build 3 nuclear bombs by 2005.
Well, now another defector, a senior Iraqi intelligence official, tells Vanity Fair in an exclusive interview that Saddam Hussein has trained an elite fighting force in sabotage, urban warfare, hijacking, and murder. David Rose wrote the story. He joins us now from London. Thank you for joining us.
In Vanity Fair's David Rose, defectors found another eager beaver for their claim. The glossy magazine, a favorite of media elites, gave him 4 big spreads to tell defector stories. The talk shows lapped it up.
What the defector al-Qarari, a former brigadier general in the Iraqi intelligence service, told me is that these guys, there are 1,200 in all. They've been trained to hijack trains, buses, ships, and so forth.
As you track their stories, they become ever more fantastic. And they're the same people who are telling these stories till you get to the most fantastic tales of all, which appeared in Vanity Fair magazine.
Our last training exercise was to blow up a full-size mock-up of a US destroyer in a lake in central Iraq.
Or jumping into pits of fouled water and having to kill a dog with your bare teeth. I mean, and this was coming from people who were appearing in all of these stories, and sometimes their rank would change.
Moussaoui told us that he has verified that this man was an officer in Iraq's ruthless intelligence service, the Mukhabarat.
And you're saying, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Because in this story, he was a major, but in this story, the guy's a colonel. And in this story, this was his function, but now he says in this story, he was doing something else.
The defector is telling Moussaoui
all you have to do is pay attention.
To evade the UN inspectors, Saddam Hussein.
This guy's like, hey, I've been paying attention. Why does this keep changing?
That the defector told us he personally bought from Renault. Refrigerator trucks, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And how many?
7.
Leslie Stahl and CBS retracted their story a year after the invasion, when nearly all the evidence presented by defectors proved to be false. Vanity Fair's David Rose later said
after the
invasion had confirmed his stories, but these were the very officials who had bet on Chalabi as their favorite man of war. To the Knight Ridder team, it all smelled of a con game.
What he did was reasonably clever but fairly obvious, which is he gave the same stuff to some reporters that for one reason or another he felt would simply report it. And then he gave the same stuff to people in the Vice President's office and in the Secretary of Defense's office. And so if the reporter called the Department of Defense or the Vice President's office to check, they would have said, oh, I think you can go with that. We have that too. So you create the appearance, or Chalabi created the appearance, that there were 2 sources and that the information had been independently confirmed, when in fact there was only one source and it hadn't been confirmed by anybody.
And let's not forget how close these people were to this administration, which raises the question, was there coordination? I can't tell you that there was, but it sure looked like it.
The administration was now stepping up.
So that's one way.
But we now know
here they get into
has resumed his efforts to acquire nuclear weapons.
So when Cheney said that, I got on the phone to people.
Here they get into how they fed this through the New York Times.
Watched proliferation.
This is amazing. I mean, this is the Cheney is evil genius at work right here.
On the basis of his intelligence sources, Landé wrote there was little evidence to back up the vice president's claims. But the story Landé wrote didn't run in New York or Washington. Knight Ridder, remember, has no outlet
I love how
in either
Bill
city.
Moyers says Washington.
So it couldn't compete with a blockbuster that appeared 2 days later on the front page of the nation's paper of record with the familiar byline. Quoting anonymous administration officials, the Times reported that Saddam Hussein had launched a worldwide hunt for materials to make an atomic bomb using specially designed aluminum tubes. And there, on Meet the Press that same morning, was Vice President Cheney.
Tubes. There's a story in the New York Times this morning. This is, and I want to attribute to the Times. I don't want to talk about, obviously, specific intelligence sources. But
now, ordinarily, information like the aluminum tubes wouldn't appear as top secret intelligence, and the Vice President and the National Security Advisor would not be allowed to talk about this on the Sunday talk shows. But it appeared that morning in the New York Times, and therefore they were able to talk about it.
New York
it's now
Times.
public that, in fact,
every time
he has been seeking to acquire, and we
helped
have been
lie
able to intercept
every war
from acquiring through this particular channel the kinds of tubes that are necessary to build a centrifuge. And the centrifuge is required to take low-grade uranium and enhance it into highly enriched uranium, which is what you have to have in order to build a bomb.
Did you see that performance?
I did.
What did you think?
I thought it's remarkable.
Why?
Remarkable. You leak a story and then you quote the story? I mean, that's a remarkable thing to do.
Dick Cheney. So what I thought was really interesting here is Oprah Winfrey even was caping for the Iraq War. Watch this.
Enough. We weren't alert enough. We didn't dig enough. And we shouldn't have been fooled in this way.
And they're being fooled again.
Even Oprah got in on the act, featuring in October
Watch
2002, New York Times reporter Judith Miller.
The U.S. intelligence community believes that Saddam Hussein has deadly stocks of anthrax, of botulinum toxin, which is one of the most virulent poisons known to man.
Liberal hawk Kenneth Pollock.
And what we know for a fact from a number of defectors who've come out
I'm gonna have to look this guy up.
is that Saddam Hussein is absolutely determined
I don't know anything about him
nuclear weapons
other than this
and
clip.
is building them as fast as he can.
And the right-hand man to Ahmed Chalabi.
And so, do the Iraqi
Chalabi
people
was the defector
want
guy.
the American people to liberate them?
Absolutely. In 1991, Iraqi people...
I hope that doesn't offend you.
When one guest
This
dared to
lady's
express
on point.
doubt, Oprah would have none of it.
I
This-
just
this-
don't know what to believe with the media.
Speak,
We're not
sister.
trying to show you propaganda. We're just showing you what is. I understand that. Okay, you have a right to your opinion. That's right.
Wow.
Contrary opinions weren't very popular in Washington either, as ambitious Democrats
Watch these
embraced
heroes.
the now
Watch these heroes
conventional
at work.
but unconfirmed wisdom.
In the wake of September 11th, who among us can say with any certainty to anybody
21
that the weapons might not be used against our troops or against allies in the
21 years
region?
ago.
It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.
So then they talk about, you know how everyone gets called Putin's little helper or a Russian asset or, you know, working for Russia. They talk. Listen to this. This is great too.
There's a notion that this is the person that we go after this week. Fox News and talk radio and the conservative bloggers, I mean, they were banging those drums very loud, and everyone in the press could hear it.
Bang
Not
those
only was it just
drums
liberal
very loud.
bias, it was an anti-American bias, an unpatriotic bias, and that these journalists were really not part of America.
And every journalist knew it. They had and they have a very effective...
It's the same
slam
thing now,
machine.
only it's the right wing that are the bad
the way it
people,
works is
and the
you
left
either
are the,
report
you know,
news
the
the way
Democrats
we
are the
want
good
reported,
war people, and
or we're gonna hang a sign
Republicans are
around
the
your neck.
far right or the
I will call those who
anti-war
publicly
people.
criticize their country in a time of military crisis, which this is, bad Americans.
There's a level of vitriol.
We're the
and
bad
vindictiveness
Americans.
That is very scary to listen
Bad
to. When you think
Americans.
The
That
millions
could-
of people listening to them. The media have become sort of
Yeah, I
like
just came up with
the
a song,
whipping boy,
Bad
because
Americans.
They know that the press can provide information that runs counter to what the government is claiming, to what the Bush administration is claiming.
Now, on his new MSNBC talk show,
This is interesting.
discovered just what could happen when you stepped out of line.
None of this has changed. It's probably only gotten worse.
Is there a place for them in this post 9/11 world, or are they just downright unpatriotic?
I just felt, what would be wrong with having one show a night, say, hold it, wait a minute, can we afford this? And do we have enough troops? And what about General Shinseki? And where are all, what is Guantanamo? What's wrong with this? I felt people who didn't like my message would watch me because no one else was doing it. That's why I couldn't get over the unanimity of opinion on cable. The drum was beating. Everybody wanted to
Just
bomb
like now.
somebody. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. So here I go.
Anyone who says anything else
Fool
is
that I
spreading
am.
Russian
I
propaganda.
Scott Ritter is here, and so is Ambassador Buck.
Scott Ritter's been out here. My man Scott Ritter's been out here for over 20 years.
If we invade, it'll
Anti-war.
be a historic blunder.
Props, Scott Ritter.
We didn't have him alone. He had to be
Being
there
smeared
with
as
someone
with
else
for sex crimes, of course.
In other words, you couldn't have Scott Ritter alone. You could have Richard Pearl alone.
You could have the conservative.
You could have the supporters of the president alone. and they would say why this war is important. You couldn't have a dissenter alone. Our producers were instructed to feature 2 conservatives for every liberal.
It's still that way, if not worse.
We wanted to talk to some others in the media about their role.
So this is where he goes through a bunch of the people
Judith Miller, who
helped sell the war. He tried to get interviews with them.
Scandal declined our request on legal grounds. The Times liberal hawk Thomas Friedman also said no.
Still there.
So did Bill Sapphire.
Still caping for war.
Iraq would now be leading the Arab world to democracy. President Bush recently awarded him the Medal of Freedom. The Washington Post's Charles Krauthammer also turned us down. So did Roger Ailes, the man in charge of Fox News. He declined because, an assistant told us, he's writing a book on how Fox has changed the face of American broadcasting and doesn't want to scoop himself.
In a bad way.
William Crystal led the march to Baghdad.
They're the blueprint for what
MSNBC
MSNBC's doing now.
He has not responded to any of our requests for an interview, but he still shows up on TV as an expert, most often on Fox News.
And he's got to begin to show progress in 3, 4, 5 months once the U.S. troops get in.
Being a pro-war pundit means never having to say you're sorry. I mean, these were people who were laying out the blueprint for the war about how it was going to unfold, and it turns out couldn't have been more wrong every which way.
You have a president.
And it's astonishing to see them still on TV, invited on as experts in the region.
So this got me thinking, what is Bill Kristol's a big one of these guys. What is Bill Kristol being wrong about today? Because he's still on TV somewhere. So watch this.
You dropped something on social media this morning that got our attention and made us think, and I'll quote from it. Mask refusers appeal to liberty, but even staunch libertarians know that checking the spread of disease is a legitimate government function. The hostility to masks isn't libertarian, it's nihilistic. Nihilism has come to characterize a significant part of today's conservatism. Bill, nihilism really leaves nothing standing because nothing matters. Life is meaningless. And the question for a guy like you with your history in modern America, how did the party of shining cities on hills
how did a guy who's been so wrong for so long stay on TV? Why are we still asking you questions? Really, Bill, why are we asking you questions? You're a terrible person who's been wrong about everything. But somehow these people are the thought leaders for the Democrats now. Because these people aren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention to politics until Trump ruined their lives, right? How does this relate to the Ukraine war? Well, I have this to what's going on today. How does this relate to what's going on today? Because this is, if we don't, how's that statement go? If you don't pay attention to history, you're doomed to repeat it, or something like that. Well, watch this clip. This is from an Oliver Stone documentary from a few years ago, actually. And this guy talks about...
Exactly. I'm not saying the whole U.S. government feels that way. There is division on this, but the neoconservative element wants very much to change the strategic dynamic in Eastern Europe. The neocons are very smart people, and they've been at this for a long time. They came in around the issue of propaganda. They studied how to create hot buttons for the American people. They had this experience when they were getting the American people to get excited about Central America back in the 1980s.
Some beneath the regular army. The ground force is being equipped now with Russian artillery.
And they've been applying those same strategies ever since. They remain very dedicated to achieving their goals. They still want to get rid of certain governments. They want to regime change in Syria, for instance, regime change in Iran.
This is from a few years ago.
They're very skilled at this, and they have a lot of allies now inside the news media, inside the government, and that means that they can do a lot to control the narrative of any story.
I think in America these days, we have somehow told ourselves that there are a lot of ways of dealing with these problems other than hard power. Vladimir Putin cares about hard power.
The neoconservatives can now demonize a leader of a country. That sells with the American people. So you don't just sort of argue a policy. You attack the leader. So the neoconservatives became very skilled at picking out leaders, finding their ugly traits, and then highlighting them.
The Hitler of the
Yanukovych, you might say was a rather clunky political leader, but you make him into a devil. He's totally corrupt, and he's evil, and he wants to kill people in the Maidan, these wonderful white-hatted demonstrators. So you've got a black hat versus white hat. And then you keep repeating that basic scenario. And it works for the American people.
You've got to realize what Vladimir Putin is. He's an old
It'll get
KGB
people who
colonel
were
that
once
wants to restore
skeptical,
the
critical
Russian
thinking
Empire.
rock stars to cape for war.
And the American people find that the way they can understand the world. Once that happens, it's very difficult for journalists or anyone else to say, hold it, that guy, he's got more of a gray hat than a white hat or a black hat. And if you say that, you're a Yanukovych apologist or you're a Putin apologist, and then the attacks come on to the person saying it, the journalist, the academic, or whoever.
So that's exactly what's going on right now, where anyone who questions the narrative or says anything in dissent works for Putin. Keith Olbermann spends his entire show just calling everyone a Russian, and I rib on Keith Olbermann a lot, but I consider him, the thought leader of the shitlib echo chamber. So when I want to know what idiots are talking about that know nothing about politics, I tune into Keith Olbermann. And he's a McCarthyist who's constantly calling everyone a Russian troll. He does no reporting with any level of nuance. He's a partisan hack who just screams on behalf of his party. And I don't think people don't want to hear that anymore. That's the reason guys like Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore are so popular, because they're honest. They call things like they see it. They're not just part of a cult. And I watch this with people like TYT, frankly, and Kyle Kalinske even, who I thought was great a couple years ago. But they've gotten to the point where you can tell they have no integrity. There's no intellectual framework for the things they're pushing. They're pushing them because they're told to. And when you start doing that, when you start, pushing things that you don't truly believe in, it's obvious. It becomes very obvious. So to tie all this up, the last story I have today is about the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. Basically, this piece of legislation made it legal for the State Department to use propaganda on Americans, which is why people like Guns N' Roses and Ministry think that they're fighting the good fight on behalf of Ukraine instead of caping for the same war that Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Korea, and all of our other bullshit wars were. The propaganda is strong. The United States is the most propagandized nation in the world, and there's no doubt about it. It's woven into everything. It's woven into TV shows. There's a frigging show, True Lies, based on the CIA agent thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what they're jerking the public off with right now. In researching the Smith-Mundt Act, I found this piece of tape from about 4 years ago, and it's mind-blowing. Rather than play the whole thing, I just pulled this clip out of it. Watch this clip.
Facebook is being accused of allowing a federal U.S. government-funded broadcast organization to target ads to Americans. The New York Times reports Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, bought several ads recently that included trending topics like Russia and NATO. The Times says it is mostly restricted by law from promoting its content.
You hear those
in the United
topics?
States. Now, the U.S.-funded broadcaster was created during the Cold War to fight back against Soviet propaganda while continuing to promote American interest abroad. It now reportedly airs mainly to audiences in Europe and the Middle East. Jennifer Greigel is an assistant professor of communications at Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Public Communications. Jennifer joins us now. Thank you so much for being us.
Thank you.
In the streets, we say you
forgot
got
the width.
skills. This was pretty cool that you were able to,
I know how it is, bro.
sort of uncover this. Tell us about the content and how you came about it.
Sure. I was out looking for examples of when U.S. state-funded media might be improperly targeting U.S. Americans and seeking to build what we call or cultivate an audience here. There was a modernization of a law back in 2013 that allowed for domestic dissemination of state-funded media, but that does not allow them to actively market and push this content that would be considered propaganda. So I went out and I was looking on Facebook. That's my specialty, social media, and with the opening of the the new Facebook political ads, I was able to see that indeed an entity under what's called the BBG, or the Broadcasting Board of Governors, which is run by the United States, was indeed targeting United States and U.S. essentially citizens with content that they created. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act.
And I'm almost certain there are some people out there who are not happy about the work that you've done.
Well, I would say that it's not an issue of should people be happy or not. What we need to understand as a public here, especially in the United States, is that there's a real risk in state-funded media being disseminated amongst American citizens. And it should not be directly competing with the free press or the independent press, just like here at CBS, NBC, CNN, New York Times. There's risk in that. And so I think it's really important for the public to know that this is happening, and for Congress to take a look at this to make sure that Facebook is not being abused by the U.S. State Department.
Are the ads still up?
They're not still up. Those ones anyway. I'm sure there's different ones. I'm sure there's different ones up now. So this is from 4 years ago, and this woman's no longer on Twitter. I might actually send her an email and see if I can interview her about this, because this is a subject that I really want to hammer on. So much so that I made tonight's remix, tonight's musical piece, because as I've said before, I'm a musician. Music is my thing. And I'm thinking, how can I... This issue to me, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, and the fact that propaganda is legal, to me needs to be a thing. And my goal is to make it a popular issue or get it known, right? So this particular remix I did tonight, it was kind of quick, and I didn't spend a ton of time on it. So I don't expect it to get that much play, but I think it's catchy enough and it's good enough that I'm going to throw it into this week's show. And props to Homeboy, who so basically here's what happened. I put Smith-Mundt into my search, and that's how I found this news piece. And all credit to CBSN for having this piece, guys. Good job, CBSN. This is actual news. It's from 4 years ago, but hey, and it's buried, but it's really good news. I mean, it's not good news, but it's it's good reporting. Let's put it that way. So anyway, I put together this remix about the Smith-Mundt Act, and I think it's a cool little mix. So I'm gonna play that video for you on the way out tonight. I mean, how good the video is depends on how much time I spend putting it together tonight. But either way, I want you to hear the song right now on the way out, because I think it came out pretty cool. So check this out.
2012, our Congress passed a bill that legalized propaganda.
There was a modernization of a law back in 2013 that allowed for domestic dissemination of state-funded media. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. Potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. Smith-Mundt Act. The 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 Smith-Mundt Act. There was a modernization of a law back in 2013 that allowed for domestic dissemination of state-funded media. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. So that would be kind of what I believe in potential violation of what's called the Smith-Mundt Act.
That was so stupid. Take good care of yourselves, people.